This is Johnny Bluestar. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Welcome back to Threshold Radio, broadcast from the Waywalkers studio at Vegas Allnet Radio, or VANR. This is Johnny Bluestar discussing, again, my fantasy presidential campaign platform. This particular discussion was provoked by a very interesting debate handled by Univision and the Washington Post interrogators on CNN. Hillary Clinton was debating Bernie Sanders, and the interview was very strange, I thought, on one level, and very interesting on another. For one thing, the people who were asking the questions, the reporters who were from Univision and from the Washington Post, as I mentioned, I would say very aggressive in their questioning. Some of these questions were aggressive, perhaps because they were challenging these candidates to talk about their Hispanic voters who they were trying to appeal to. And there is certainly no way of avoiding some controversy on both sides. The problem was that not only were these questions kind of antagonistic and challenging perhaps morality and their diligence and even their honesty, but they also kept interrupting these people, Hillary and Bernie, when they kept talking. So the debate was quite contentious and quite annoying, actually, because there were so many interruptions. After all, this wasn't the Republican debate where there were like 16 people or 10 people or 5 people. There were just 2 people here talking to each other. And I thought it was unnecessary that the debate be conducted in this way. As a matter of fact, if I were orchestrating these debates, I would never have debates that had 30 seconds to answer questions like, what are you going to do about the economy? What are you going to do about taxes? What are you going to do about Syria? How can you answer questions like that effectively in 30 seconds or even a minute? You have to have more time. The alternative to that is that they sometimes sit the candidates down alone and they sit with them for maybe 10 or 15 minutes in some of these town hall meetings. But that isn't really doing the job either, because really a good debate would have more interaction between these people. So if I was in charge of these campaign debates, I would give the American people a chance to choose. What's happening in these debates is that people are coming up again and again with sound bites. Why? Because they don't really have any time for much more. Oh, see my website, or see this white paper that was written. Well, that's not really enough. Now, I admit that I find perhaps Bernie Sanders more attractive in certain ways. I'm talking about his platform, not his personality or appearance. I find his ideas more compatible with what I would think would be the better reality for the American people in terms of economics. But he has certain ideas about, you might say, defense and the way he looks at things about geopolitics that I find very unfortunate. And I find none of these people really talking about key issues, particularly the issue of surveillance. That seems to me the number one issue. I don't see them talking about it at all. And for that to become relegated to nowhere, and no reporter asking those questions either, that strikes me as rather strange. But in a world where there is continual surveillance, perhaps it shouldn't be so strange. Perhaps we should get used to it. But I'm not able to get used to it. Therefore, the number one point in my fantasy campaign presidential platform is to get rid of warrantless surveillance, which is just a complete abrogation of our rights and puts every single American in danger of this type of abuse being this type of surveillance being misused, possibly by accident, possibly by intentionally by people who gain control over some of these files, some of this information. Tremendous things could be lost. Tremendous opportunities for our advancement in taking care of terrorism is being lost by people who are basically surveying masses and millions of people and looking for keywords instead of doing real detective work. Real detective work is possible under very customized surveillance, which is approved by a court. And if that's the case, I'm all for it. If it's based on people actually looking like they're about to commit a serious crime. But I don't think my grandmother should be surveyed, or my sister, or my best friend. And they occasionally might talk about something of interest that might, trigger a little keyword, and then they're in trouble. That's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous to waste millions and billions of dollars on violating our constitutional rights to privacy. And if somebody disagrees with me that's a constitutional right, I'll say to you that I think it's an inalienable right. And the Constitution is not supposed to choke out inalienable rights that are not mentioned. So my feeling about the debate is that it was kind of complicated. Bernie Sanders has been very nice in not mentioning the email problem that Hillary Clinton has. Now, I can't adjudicate this problem. I can't say whether or not Hillary Clinton was saying that these emails that she was sending out was basically declassified retroactively. Although a CNN fact check says that they were. It says that they were definitely retroactively classified, which means that they weren't sent out as classified material by her, but she was using a private server that was in her bathroom and doing the work of the Secretary of State outside of the rules governing those type of exchanges, as far as I understand. Do I think it's important? Well, I'm not sure that everything was retrospectively declassified. Donald Trump is convinced, and he's willing to say that she should be under indictment. I myself am not convinced. I just don't know. And I don't think everyone has a clear idea of this, because there's so much information and misinformation being passed around. This is a problem. So it's really hard to say what the truth is, but I think that it basically should be somewhat kept out of the debates. Why? Because you can't explain this in a soundbite or two, and you can't really prove it one way or the other. It really is up perhaps for the courts to take care of if, in fact, she's indicted, and she's not been indicted yet. So, but then again, there's the problem of the fact that you have somebody with a serious charge that is made against other people, like General Petraeus, who actually lost his position because of his release of certain classified materials, of kind of breaking some of the rules. And if she did that, and there really is a serious thing about that, then why hasn't she been indicted? Because she's Hillary Clinton, for the former Secretary of State, or because she's totally innocent and there's nothing to indict her for? And then again, you have the question of, is Obama going to, if she is guilty, is he going to pardon her? It's a very strange thing to have somebody running under these conditions. And I'm not saying she shouldn't run, because if she's innocent and she hasn't really done anything wrong except a kind of minor thing, then maybe this is just allowing a fuel against her rather than helping her by not, getting this thing over with before she's at the point of being nominated, or at the point of being in the conclusive rates before the nomination. It's just a very strange thing. I think that Bernie Sanders is right in not making a point about it, but the reporters didn't feel that way, and I guess that's their right too. So that's what's happening about that. Now, there's another question here. One part of the debate was, why didn't Bernie Sanders agree to bail out the auto industry? And the fact is, there was a bailout, and this was the bailout of Wall Street that was linked to the actual auto industry bailout. And that was the reason he didn't do it, because he was for bailing out the auto industry, but he wasn't for bailing out Wall Street. Should Wall Street have been bailed out? I can't say for sure that I know that if Wall Street should have been bailed out or not, but I do think that there was criminality involved in all this, and there was some serious lack of oversight. The people who got bailed out, they didn't even, no one really got prosecuted, and money that was supposed to be designated to pay some of these problematic mortgages was given to the banks, as I understand it. So the banks took it and they did what they wanted to. Did they do it in a way that stimulated the economy, that was really helpful, or did they sort of do it for their own purposes to make further money from the money that was given to them by the American people? On the other hand, the banks did return the money. So that is something that Hillary Clinton was saying. The automobile industry did not. So that's kind of interesting too. This is sort of where you stand on these matters, and it's kind of strange, these debates, and I think that we really have to look at them very carefully. We'll be back in a minute. We are happy to provide our audience with two very exciting musical odysseys with Stephanie Slevin, a singer-songwriter from the United Kingdom. One is called Show Number 7, A Galaxy of Song, and the other is Show 21, I Talk with Angels, in our Threshold Radio archives in VegasAllNetRadio.com and YouTube. Here's one of our songs.
They say what goes around comes right back around, but that's not true for me. They say what goes around comes right back around, and that it comes in threes. Please bring me rest, bring me some peace. Please knock on my door, and I promise I'll ask for nothing forever, evermore. Rise up from the darkness and step into the light. Close your eyes, embrace me, feel tomorrow.
My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a California corporation specializing in the creation of media and promotional content. We are focused on original, innovative projects that are good for humanity. These projects could be nonfiction books or novels, fictional screenplays or documentary content, websites and website content, commercial advertising content for print, audio, or video products on the internet, television, or radio, musical scores for advertising, television, or film, video, audio editing, etc. We want to promote products and projects that support the environment, encourage a healthy experience in living, developing, nurturing, and useful technology, and offering platforms for positive, socially constructive entertainment or informative, transformative media. Our experience in creating a variety of products like this is rather vast, and we offer client-based and collaborative products, as well as the opportunity of active investors to join us in the creation and promotion of proprietary products, some of which are in latter stages of development. For more information, go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. That's www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. If you're interested in talking to us, just fill out the contact sheet and we will get back with you.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of this stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy. We ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
This is Johnny Bluestar back with Threshold. We're discussing my fantasy presidential campaign platform in regards to some of the people involved, some of the candidates involved in the actual presidential campaign, and particularly in reference to a debate I heard yesterday with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Very, very interesting debate. It brings up so many different things. First of all, I'd like to discuss democratic socialism. I think this is very interesting, how the word socialism has finally gotten into the American dialogue, and in a way that seems reasonably acceptable for someone who calls himself a socialist to be in the limelight like this and possibly winning the presidency. The problem with it is that what you call democratic socialism is not really the kind of extreme socialism that we might talk about like in the, say, Soviet Union or Cuba or China. This is a completely different animal. It could be called democratic capitalism because, as I've mentioned before in my former discussion with Rod Tyler about my presidential campaign, is that socialism is a sort of collective governmental approach to certain problems, and capitalism is a kind of private, personal, individual, or corporate approach to making money in a political system. The two are not opposed. They're absolutely necessary in every culture, except certain cultures, like maybe the Soviet Union used to be, were very much more socialist-oriented or government-oriented, and they own and controlled most of the industries. Whereas in a socialist democracy like, say, Denmark or Finland, you're talking about sort of like an expansion of welfare or certain aspects of welfare that were true before. For instance, having public schools, having public colleges, public universities. This is not something that's new to the United States. Now, some of these things are quite expensive, but public universities, state-owned universities, Medicare, Medicaid in the states, the fact that our police and military are certainly controlled entirely by the government, which is typical. But those are also, then you have, say, veterans benefits, special types of programs for veterans. So you have all these different programs that we already have. And some of them are limited. Okay, you have to wait a certain time to get Medicare. Educational programs are certainly, we have a tremendous problem here. So actually a good functioning government is going to have both. So if a government says, okay, we don't want anybody to be poor, we're going to provide maybe at least a minimum wage that they can live, which is not really socialism, but it's in effect controlling this sort of thing. It's a kind of socialist activity, I guess. And you say, well, these people, we don't want people dying in the streets like Donald Trump says. But we actually have a way of them not dying on the streets by not throwing them into some kind of emergency room or some kind of inadequate and unstructured way of dealing with those people, because they actually have health care, like Bernie Sanders says, that's in all the major developed countries. So you have universal health care, what Hillary Clinton said she was initially trying to accomplish, but failed. I don't know how close that what she was trying was to Obamacare, which is really more of a kind of a mixture, a very pro-capitalist mixture of insurance companies and, Medicare and medical services, I mean. So, what you have in this situation is that you have, in the so-called democratic socialist countries, a very good mix. Retirement is taken care of. People have vacations. People can get their education paid for, and they have high taxes. But they still have a tremendous amount of business opportunities. These countries are not taking over all the industries. They allow people to have their own business, and they allow people to prosper. We have a country now that in a lot of these corporations, it used to start out, 16-1, 32-1 with the CEO compensation versus the average worker. Now you have things like 395-1. I mean, you have this egregious gap between the wealthy and the poor, where the wealthy own so much of the world. It's almost incredible to believe. How could a majority, a vast majority, of way over 99% of the people of the world, allow a small number of people to take over? And this gets to another sort of problem, because there's a problem with how people relate to authority. Unfortunately, because of the human mind, the way it's structured, the way our brains are structured, many people never actually think for themselves. They basically are brought up where they believe whatever their church or parents or friends believe. They don't question the way that they live. Fortunately, in this country, and it's a great power in this country, there is still a lot of freedom of speech. And there is a lot of debate and discussion, even of the most contentious things, like, as I said in the last section, surveillance and torture. We still can discuss these things. That's a fantastic thing, that we can discuss these things, even though they are abusive and they are probably against the Constitution of the United States and against the spirit of the Declaration. But we can still discuss them. And that gives us still an enormous power and enormous freedom. But despite that power and freedom, people in this country, like in all the countries in the world, mostly do not really question or think about their lives. They are content with accepting what happens to them because they believe somehow the authority that's above them is sacred. And of course, I do think there is something to the fact that a benign ruler who's aligned with the right spirit is performing a sacred function. He's acting in terms of the what I would consider to be the will of God. He's trying to help the people in his country. He's trying to enlighten them. He's trying to give them protection. This is a wonderful thing, and I think it's a godly thing, however you want to call it. But when you have The fact is that people are very amenable to being told things that they want to believe, and those things that they want to believe are things that can be easily manipulated in the hands of somebody who is very powerful and authoritative. And for that reason, although I think he has some good ideas, I would say that persona of Donald Trump is very much like that. He's a very authoritative person. He demands a certain kind of obsequience or obedience to his ideas to consider if he's worth talking to. And if he doesn't like you, he doesn't mind commenting on either your physical appearance or saying something about a person's disability or a person's religion or status. It's just incredible how this man is creating a following when he's violating and willing to violate so many different of our laws. One of the things that most stands out in my mind that really, truly upset me is when he starts talking about waterboarding. And he says, well, yeah, we're going to have waterboarding because not only are these people, terrible people and guilty, but they deserve it. Well, the trouble with that, among all the other troubles with that, including the violation of the principle lying behind the Eighth Amendment, is that a person who is usually tortured has not been proven guilty. So you're sort of, you're taking an extrajudicial step here to torture somebody who may be entirely innocent. If he's not innocent, he hasn't been vetted by any kind of real judicial or intelligent process, but thrown in the hands of people who are basically asked to torture somebody, which often leads one to the expectation that they won't get the truth anyway. But I'm not talking about the truth or not the truth. I'm talking about just the fact that he would take a position that has been so against the United States prior to George Bush and prior to every civilized country, that he would take this position and start talking this way about the people he wants to imprison without any kind of trial or equity. So I have to say right now that in my view, the good things about the Constitution, including most of the substance of the Bill of Rights, are inalienable rights of mankind. So they don't just belong to the United States. They belong to everybody. Everybody in the world deserves to have that same protection. Now, we are not in charge of the world. I'm not saying we should be. The United States should be, certainly not now, because we're certainly not living up to our constitutional rights. But even if we were, everybody has to make their own decision in their own sovereign country as to what they're going to do and what they should be respected. I'm just saying that these inalienable rights belong to everybody, and they should be in the laws of every country. They are kind of enshrined in some of the United Nations documents, but they're not really practiced in the right way. So we're going to take a break now and be back in a few minutes. Here's a song from Patricia Welch's CD collection, Great Entertainment, Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia. You can find it at Threshold Radio /Patricia Welch. Here's a simply amazing version of La Vie en Rose, written by the immortal French singer Edith Piaf and imaginatively performed by Patricia Welch.
Des yeux qui font baisser la lumière, un rire qui sous-perçait sa bouche. Voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme qu'elle a entière. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, j'avoue la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les gens, et ça me fait quelque chose. pas de bonheur dont j'ai connu la cause. Il a pour moi ma pluie dans la vie, il mélodie la journée par la vie. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens en moi mon cœur qui bat. Des nuits de mon plume finie, au grand bonheur qui pense aux places, des émuits des chars s'effacent. Au rêve, on a mouru. Quand il me pend dans ses bras, il me parle à tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur, une part de bonheur dont j'ai connu la cause. Il a pour moi ma pluie dans la vie, il mélodie la journée par la vie. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens en moi mon cœur qui bat.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
By God, are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born.
New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising, If you wish to contact Robert, go to JohnnyBlueStar.com and let me know. That's JohnnyBlueStar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too. If you like Threshold Radio, a program which deals with core issues affecting our personal, political, and spiritual lives, and advocates the creation of an enlightened, informed citizenry, not only in America, but throughout the world, then you might think of supporting both your product and business and our message by advertising on our show. All programs are archived and are supported in various ways, including social media, our outreach being broadcast weekly on VegasAllNetRadio.com, a very advanced internet broadcasting station, but also archived directly on our websites on YouTube and in SoundCloud. We believe in time we will have a very broad outreach. Through New Galaxy Enterprises, our parent company, we can create a wide range of marketing and advertising components to complement your advertising on Threshold Radio and increase your outreach in many creative and exciting ways. If interested, just go to www.thresholdradio.com and fill out a contact form with your interest. That's www.thresholdradio.com. Hi, this is Johnny Bluestar. We're back on Threshold discussing my fantasy presidential campaign platform versus the other candidates who are running for president. Now, my fantasy campaign presidential platform is not really for me to run for office. I'm actually holding up my ideas against their ideas. So let's get on to some of the more interesting parts of this discussion. I have lived and worked actually in Coachella Valley, which is in which there are a lot of Hispanic people and probably a lot of undocumented workers there. I worked, for one thing, in a Spanish station. I speak a little bit of Spanish, not very well, but enough so that I have a sort of sense about the language and certainly about the culture. Much less I do love Mexican food, I will say that. But what I'm trying to say in general is that I do appreciate the culture. And I particularly appreciate the fact that a lot of these undocumented workers are coming here because they want to protect their families. They are under tremendous economic stress. Sometimes they're under stresses caused by the political gyrations of the drug cartels and other things like that. But whatever their reason, the majority of the people here are not criminals. They are people trying to survive. And what would you do if you were trapped in a country where you couldn't get enough to eat, to feed your family, or you had to live in basically a hovel, or you were living in a way that there was just surrounding you such unsanitary conditions that there was disease and premature death? What would you do? Would you try to cross over to another country? Would you pay a coyote, what they call the people who transport these people illegally? Would you pay them to get over there? Well, I certainly would think about it. I'm not saying that that it's the right thing to do on the big, grand ethical scale of things. I don't know. But I will say this, that I can totally sympathize with these people. And I would say that they are mostly heroes daring to take their family, their children, across a border illegally, yes, so that they can survive. Now, is that good for us? No. It's not really good for a country to be flooded by workers who might take care of certain welfare benefits, might crowd out the workplace. I think it's debatable how much this has affected us, because you could say also, well, these people are taking jobs that other people don't want. I think sometimes they do want these jobs, and I think sometimes they don't. I don't know if that's the point. One of the points that's been brought out by many people, and I think you could almost say by all of them, is that coming here illegally is not really a good thing. It's not really a good thing to allow people to come into a country and basically, compete with the people who are here. I don't think this is right. And I will explain and go into that later, but I will say this. The people that are here, they shouldn't be rounded up in the middle of the night and sent and deported. I can't think of anything more ridiculous than deporting millions of people who have worked under really terrible conditions because they were so afraid to go back, or so actually impressed by the little that they can make here. So I don't regard those people as people who should be deported. I think they should be given medals. The problem is we can't have every country in the world and everybody who's in trouble just coming over here without going through certain procedures. So I'm going to say what seems to be a terrible thought is that I do agree that the border should be secured, if necessarily militarily. But I want to say what I mean by that. I do think that it is appropriate that the military on our borders take charge. But I do not think they should be using lethal or deadly weapons. In most cases, they should be equipped with a different kind of defensive technology. Now, I'm going to go into that a little bit more later. But what I'm trying to say is that it is necessary that we keep out people, not just these poor, desperate people who might challenge some of the competitive features of our economy, but terrorists. We can't afford to have terrorists come in here from outside. We must protect our country, and we must also protect our workers. We must control what comes in and what comes out of this country. And yes, it may be necessary to build a wall, like Trump says, or something like that, possibly on both borders. He says, well, we can't do it on the Canadian border. It's too expensive. I'm not sure if you need an actual wall. What I'm saying is that what you need to do is secure the borders. And if a wall is the way to do it, then do it. If you need to use the military to do it, but don't do it in a way that's harmful to people's lives. And yes, if you're worried about, tunnels being driven underneath, well, then get ready to do a lot of surveillance of that area to make sure that tunnels aren't being built. Yes, we need to have our borders secure. On the other hand, we need, as far as I'm concerned, except for criminals and people who really shouldn't belong here in just the ordinary legal sense, these people should be able to stay, period. But we need to secure these borders. So from this point, I want to get into something I mentioned briefly. I mentioned that I think we should be using a non-lethal weapon technology at the borders. Unfortunately, I think that some of our, what I would call, these different kinds of ways of protecting ourselves, like tasers and, different kinds of sprays that we spray on people to make them sort of sick or cough or whatever. These are not really all that good, maybe. Maybe we need a whole new approach to defense technology. I mean, when people talk about, the latest Gulf War, and they talk about surgical strikes, it's just like saying that drones are surgical strikes. Sure, you've got a drone and it's pinpointing a target, but it kills all these people besides the target. And that's the problem. It is a problem for me, incidentally, that you send drones over to other countries without their permission, targeting people, even now Americans, who are supposed to have done something wrong, and maybe they have. That's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about strikes, for instance, against the Palestinians who are lobbing rockets at Israel, and Israel, needs to be able to defend itself. But do they have to kill children in the process? Well, in a certain sense, because of the technology that exists, particularly in the area of sort of a crowded city area or a town that has a lot of people in it, a lot of civilians, you are going to kill people, and you can't tell who you're going to kill. We need to have a much more humane and hopefully as non-lethal as possible way of fighting wars, because there are wars that we need to fight. Having a certain type of a background where parts of my family were killed in Poland, and we're talking about a lot of them. Some of them supposedly, 10 of them supposedly in the Warsaw Ghetto, but others in concentration camps. I'm not too unhappy about having fought Hitler. But when I see some of the ways we fought these wars with atomic bombs that kill all these thousands of innocent people, or the fires at Dresden, which just mutilate and hurt so many civilians, I have to say, I'm not impressed by that type of warfare. I want there to be something else. We say, okay, the United States is in charge. The United States and certain countries now have nuclear weapons. We don't want anyone else to have them. Do you know how many possibilities there are for errors in the use of nuclear weapons now, particularly with ballistic missiles? Do you know how little time people have to make judgments in where they're going to send these weapons of mass destruction? We are still in MAD, mutual assured destruction scenarios. This is a very bad thing. This is something that we do not really want to have when it comes to our own protection. Because when we have these weapons aimed at us, we're aiming weapons at them, we've got defensive shields, they've got defensive shields, we build more, they build more, millions and billions and billions and billions of dollars squandered on something that we haven't used since 1945 and these devastating, horrible events at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So that's something else that we need to do. We need to change the kind of warfare we have. I like to say, back in the early 20th century, perhaps, we already had solar energy, and we decided basically to go with oil. So, and with other, oil and natural gas and so forth. We decided to use methodologies that were harmful. Maybe we didn't know how harmful they were, but people lived in Los Angeles for decades, as an example, or now in China or in other places in the world, multiple cities that are filled with this smoke and smog know what I'm talking about. Even more so, the dangers that perhaps exist because of climate warming. And that's another feature that was discussed in this program with Hillary and Bernie. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be right back. Patty Greer journeyed to England to investigate crop circles, eventually becoming a filmmaker, chronicling this phenomena and serving as a kind of intermediary between the unknown creators and a humanity on the brink of global disaster. Hear her complete story by visiting Show 1, Patty Greer, Crop Circle Mysteries, in our Threshold Radio archives in Vegas, allnetradio.com, and YouTube. Here's Patty's We Want Our Planet Back.
We want our planet back. It's been going on too long. Everyone is waking up, and the animals are strong. Nature needs rebounding, so we're wishing on the stars. I'm just a kid at heart, and that is where we start. Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here? Let's do it differently. It's sickening all the people, and it's killing all the trees. It's falling in our eyes, and it's getting harder to see the beauty that is our world and the freedom to be free. It's landing in the water. We know it's in the air. It's time for you and me to show we care. Say no to GMOs hiding in our food, and no to fluoride in our water too. Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here? Let's save this family and do what's right for Earth and you and me. Step into the new way, where we live in harmony. No more war, no more fracking. We are free.
charge here? Who's in charge? Let's do it differently. Sickening all the people, and it's killing all the trees. It's falling in our eyes, and it's getting harder to see the beauty that is our world and the freedom to be free.
Patty Greer has just finished Women of Today, which showcases the talent of wise women in their medicine, embodying, as she puts it, one of the greatest underlying secrets of human evolution. Women of Today will be having their premiere screenings in Colorado very soon. Another movie, Crop Circle Diaries, largely completed to the best of my knowledge, surely will be one of the creme de la cremes of UFO films. This film is the result of her extraordinary experiences after personally visiting over 100 crop circles and an otherworldly encounter with the deceased scientist William Levengood that led her to meeting Penny Kelly, his secret lab partner, who for 16 years joined him in an extensive investigation of the crop circle phenomena. Find out more about Patty and her extraordinary work at pattygreer.net.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them!" Again we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's Westside Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
We'll go out with some music from composer Zave Nathan in a piece called Dreaming Again.